Go back through your timeline. Take a moment to reflect on the generations that your family has written in the book of history. Look at how things have evolved in your families. Can you go back and see how the progress has been made? From generation to generation, from father to father to father. Granted, not every situation has always been this beautiful painting. It's been this great experience. There's always been trials and tribulations and things that we may not necessarily be proud of. However, those moments are all dictated by the information that we have in that current situation. And after the situation's over, we have the opportunity to learn and to grow and to be better if we so choose. And for the people that have chosen to be better, to do the best that they can, and to consistently and constantly strive for improvement, go back and look through your generations. Look at how that has been building and building and building into things that people can be proud of. Things that the family can look at and say, this is generational wealth. That we have created a family, we have came together, that we have broken generational curses and improved upon our families. Those things never would have happened if there weren't situations that people in the family may not necessarily be proud of. Every opportunity is an experience that can be utilized for the furtherment of the betterment of the man. Roll that intro. Thank you for joining us on the Man Up and Own It show, where we tell the stories of men and the discomfort and the uncomfortable situations that they have gone through in order to become the men that they are today. Today is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes because today I got the man himself that helped raise me into being the man I am today, my father, Alan Reeves. Thanks for being on the show, Dad.
You're welcome.
I know this is not the thing that you thought you would be doing when you came to Phoenix to see me, but it's an honor to have you on the show and for maybe the people out there to kind of hear some of the stuff that we have grown through.
Yeah. We've grown through many things.
This is true. And contrary to what some people may believe, I wasn't the best kid growing up. In fact, I did a lot of really dumb things that put a huge strain on our relationship. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You had great skills and great stupidity.
Right.
And stupidity is not necessarily the word, but you tried things that you really shouldn't have done.
Absolutely. And fortunately for me, I had the opportunity to be surrounded by individuals that helped me hold myself accountable to becoming better. Now, granted, some of those situations that I found myself put me in situations where I lost freedoms. I lost the opportunity to do things. Mm-hmm. But through the example that you set for me was to never give up, to be willing to do the hard stuff, and to keep pushing forward with the best opportunities that you can create for yourself in front of you. So I thank you for that. But what was some of the difficulties that you grew up with as a kid out in the middle of Iowa?
Well, your dad's or my family was rather on the unique side. My father was 56 years old when I was born. and I'm the youngest, or I'm the oldest. I have a sister 5 years younger. So he was 61 when Annette was born. My father missed World War I because he was too old. His little brother ended up as an ambulance driver in France, and he died about the time I was conceived. Wow. So the family, and my mother was my dad's second wife, and his first marriage did not go well. The story I hear was that he came home to catch his first wife in bed with his best friend.
Which is absolutely nuts. I believe that anybody in today's time period that would find themselves in that situation would probably be dealing with the same emotions that he dealt with.
Yeah. And he, of course, then there's more to the story in that when he was about between 4 and 5, his father died. He was a contractor, a very successful man in his community, and he fell off a roof and died after they tried doing surgery on him. He was actually mayor of the little town that they lived in. And then, of course, the grandmother had 5 older daughters. My dad was the 6th child, and then he had a brother that was about 2 years younger than he. So the family history goes way back. Now, the grandmother's father, whether she ever saw him, well, whether she would never have known about what he looked like, but the James T. Halleck was my great-grandfather. That was my grandmother's father. He died at Chickamauga in 1863. September 19th of 1863. So he never saw it. He was in the 92nd. He was in the Civil War. Got put out for being sick. Went back, and he then went on and died during Chickamauga. So she never really saw him. Her mother survived, remarried, and lasted till she was 99. And was basically called Grandma Smokes. And somewhere in the stuff back at home at my house, I have the little stone pipe that she smoked. The stem isn't there, but I have the bowl.
Really?
It's a little bitty thing. About that long and about that tall.
Interesting.
They're interesting people. The older girls had been married, had kids, had husbands die, had all kinds of stuff going on in the family. Mom and Dad met at a dance, and they had lost people. Things had happened. He'd lost. You have to remember that your grandfather was 40 years old in 1932.
How much older was Grandpa than Grandma? 20
years.
So all the people out there right now that think a 20-year gap is difficult, it is. Because Grandpa died when you were 5?
I was about 13.
13 years old. Could you imagine losing your dad at 13? And then all of a sudden you have to be the man of the house, to take care of your sister, to help take care of your mom, and growing up in a very rural area, right?
No, it was a town about like Dodge City. It was the other Fort Dodge. It was about 30,000 people.
Okay.
And Dad, his last job he was a hospital orderly, so he pushed people to surgery until he was like 69, and they retired him, which basically broke the man. He was completely devastated because that was his image. He was that.
His identity was then taken from him.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden he was lost.
And he had a young family. Now, my sister 5 years younger than I'm 13, and she's about 8 in there. And it was really devastating for the man. Because that was who he was. That was his whole social life.
Right.
And I think we tend to forget how the social life around us is related to the work we do.
Absolutely. It's easy to discredit it in a way, right?
It's easy to do that, and it's really hard because, you're not, the first question out of somebody's mouth, and what do you do?
Absolutely.
Is part of what it was. And because Dad was only 5 when his father was 4 or 5 when his father died, all he had were women around him. He really didn't get raised with other men as such, and he didn't relate really well with, the guy started telling hunting stories, the rest of the stuff. I mean, he didn't hunt. He actually didn't like guns at all. His situation was that he and a friend, he talked his mother into allowing him to take his dad's 10 gauge out. And the damn fool that was with him started to walk in front of him as he was firing at the target. And so the side of the guy's head was covered with black powder, and he was deaf in 1 ear out of the deal.
Wow.
So Dad was really kind of against the stuff.
Right. It hurt his friend, so why would he want to continue to have something around him like that?
Yeah.
And it's not like at that point in time, information was just readily available.
No. The world that he grew up in, I mean, there's stories that I've heard, the guys on Halloween, I think it was, actually took a buggy apart and put it on top of a barn, and the police, the local constable caught him and said, "Okay, boys, take it down."
Interesting.
I mean, after you got the whole thing up on the roof, you thought you were really doing the trick and got caught at it, and now you got to get it back down.
And think about it, if that would have happened in today's time, those kids would just gone to prison and the boogie would have stayed up on the building.
Probably, yeah. But that was a different time and place.
Right. Well, now, so I have a question for you. Considering the different time and place and the things that Grandpa went through as a kid, how do you think that had an impact on you as a child?
I think that basically for him, he didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
To be very honest, he didn't know how to raise a man. He really didn't know how to relate to a kid.
Yeah.
And I wasn't exactly the easiest kid to get up and get with and deal.
Right.
I mean, I'm the kid who was awake at 5 o'clock in the morning, and probably I had attention deficit disorder.
Yeah, I mean, you've always been really curious, though. And that's one of the things I've also learned from you is your curiosity in defining information and learning and growing.
Yeah, and I don't relate either with a lot of people. I mean, my perspective on things is different and always has been. I look at things in a different way, and I finally come to accept that that's part of what I am.
Yeah, and that's who other people are too.
Yeah.
And they may not, and that's okay. Because I am the same exact way, and I learned that I was intimidating to people because I am formidable. I challenge people to be better. I challenge people to think about things differently, and that that may not be comfortable for them, it helps them grow into better people. Mm-hmm. And just accept it and move on, move forward, and keep doing the right thing.
Well, but the thing is that we judge people on packages.
Yeah.
We have a visual problem. We look at a package and assume certain things about that package, but you may not know what's actually under the wrapper.
Right, and I think that's our responsibility at that point, is to open the wrapper and find out. However, what we see on the outside is a good indicator of what things are most likely to be. If an individual is overweight, then the likelihood that they're healthy is probably less than someone that isn't overweight. Now, it's not saying it's to be 100% true, because we could look at a professional bodybuilder, for example, and assume that they might be healthy, but in reality, they're very unhealthy because of all the choices that they've made to be that big and that muscular and that low on fat.
Well, what it takes to get to the point to be the bodybuilder.
Right.
There are other, as you well know. I mean, you're a shadow of your former self.
This is true.
I mean, you were really into the bodybuilding thing, and you did it to the max.
Right. And to the point where I recognize that this is unhealthy. I'm probably going to die if I continue doing the same things. Now, what's important in my life? Is being a bodybuilder, getting my pro card important, or is being a quality father, a quality husband, a quality son, being a quality member of my community? Which one's most important? And it wasn't becoming a pro bodybuilder.
No. And that's fleeting. You know, that's one of the things from the outside looking in. I look at athletes, you know, as you well know, I am about as unathletic as anything you ever ran across. I mean, you know, the only time I ever got on base I played Little League. Is I got hit in the head with a ball, so I got on first base.
Wow.
And it wasn't fun for me.
Right.
So that was kind of the way that went. But my area, I mean, I was reading, I was looking at stuff and trying to learn something and learn skills. And then, of course, with Dad gone, then I found other men around that helped me learn things. I went with people and did things.
Nice.
And that was part of where it came from. But you end up having to do those kinds of things is finding what I call the reference resource.
Yep.
And right now you're finding reference resources with what you're doing here. I mean, I don't know whether what I'm talking about is of any value to anybody else, but...
Well, that's solely the responsibility of the individuals out there that are watching these episodes, because I believe that all information is relative to situations that individuals may occur. Now, you talk about reference resources. You could have all the resources in the world, but if you don't know how to find the right ones for the right situations and then be able to apply it, it's all worthless.
Yeah. Well, and to look ahead, because if you don't, you know, you see something happen, and you have to not only look. I mean, my recommendation has always been you look at this, but you keep looking at all the other things, because you don't, unless you really look out around you, you don't see what is interacting with the other. Oh. And, you know, if you were the horse dealer back at the beginning of the 20th century, and you looked at that crazy car and you said, that's never going to make anything out of itself. Well, it kind of puts you out of business.
It did.
About 10 years, 20 years down the line, 10 years down the line.
Right. Well, and I think it's the balancing act that we have, right? People let their pendulum swing too far both ways instead of being centered. So you need to be in the moment, but not so in the moment that you're not looking out ahead of you for the future. But you can't be so looking out ahead of you for the future that you're not recognizing what's going on around you in the moment. So once we start having more and more experiences and start becoming more well-rounded, we become more stable and balanced.
Yeah, yeah. And how to balance family and work.
Yes. And I believe sometimes it's learning how to include them. You know, we have the Legacy of Leadership dinners, and we put on these dinners for men, my community, try to help men, but I found ways to include my family into it. Marianne loves to take photos. She loves to capture these moments. That's her thing, and it's always been her thing. So what did we do? We found a way to include her into it so I could spend time with her, both of us doing the things that we love to do, and we both get to walk away fulfilled.
Yeah. And you both get to use your skills.
Yes.
You wouldn't be functioning well without Mary Ann, because she takes care of the things, the details that makes your operation work.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people out there that argue on the relationship is a partnership. And that was one of the things that you taught me as a very young boy, that I needed to find a good partner. Now, it's not social media frenzy where this man's dominant and he has a wife, but in reality, the successful man actually has a partner. He has someone that's doing the things that he doesn't necessarily do well, or he may not necessarily have the time, capabilities, and energy to be able to do it well. So like you said, Mary Ann steps up and does all these details behind the scene, gets little things done so I can do this. I can perform and I can provide in what I'm good at. And Mom's done that really well for you also.
Yeah, your mother is an exceptional woman. I got an exceptional partner. And we would not have survived as well as we have if I wasn't for her. I mean, I give a lot of credit to her. And she's a unique woman in that she could handle the kinds of things that we did. I mean, I worked in a powerhouse as a power plant operator. It was the best job I could find that would made the most money. And it paid for things that went on, for you to be able to go and do MIYB basketball and a lot of things. But the trade-off to that is that you marry the plant. It makes no difference whether it's Christmas, whatever it is. If the plant's going down and they need you, you're going to be there. If the plant has if you have a problem in the family, you're staying at the plant. I do remember one night when you crashed a car, and I couldn't leave until I could get somebody to cover for me. So that was part of what you had with that. I mean, and you're tied to it. And you really don't think about the job unless you think about the power that you're actually playing with.
Right.
You're operating a bomb that will take out half a town.
So it completely changes the level of responsibility that you have.
Yeah.
You're not longer just thinking about you and your family. You're thinking about all these other families. Yeah. All these people that completely depend upon you to do your job.
Yeah.
That's a huge weight to carry.
It's kind of a tough thing to do. The other thing you have to remember is in the power business, all of your customers are addicts.
Yeah.
The old days, in the old days, the power plant could go down. The clocks were all electric motors, so the power went off for a minute or two until you could get things straightened around, or get the unit back on, or get it set up so you could feed it. But with the new stuff, now with technology, the power blinks, everything in the house goes down because they're all electronic, and you need an 8-year-old to go reset everything because the adults don't have a clue on how to reset the clock on the microwave or even the clock.
Yeah. It's crazy, right? Like,
yeah.
At this point in our society, if the power went out, we would all die. Or at least the mass majority of us would. The toilets would stop working, the fridge would stop working, the grocery stores wouldn't be able to get their food. We wouldn't be able to have stoplights to suggest who gets to go first. All of these little things we take for granted would disappear, and we would get the true nature of man.
Yeah, yeah. You would have some very interesting times for the everybody else, and it doesn't matter whether it's a big city or a little one.
Yep.
Because so much of it is run on electric power, and that's the blessing and curse. Because the thing you can see sitting in the control room in the chair, operating the boiler, and you end up with a power plant going down in Tennessee, and you're in Kansas, and it knocks your unit around 7 or 8 megawatts.
Right. We're all so intricately wired together that the down of somewhere else plays impact onto us.
Yeah, there are three main grids. There's the eastern grid that ends up about the end of Kansas, and then the western grid, which comes from the coast, from California back to about Colorado. And then Texas, of course, Texas has its own grid.
Yeah.
So that's the third grid. But they are, and you cannot connect the eastern grid and the western grid because the power angles are wrong. So in order to hook those two together, you have to change it from AC to DC and then put it back and turn it, when you take it into the Colorado side, then you turn it back over from DC to AC.
Never thought it'd be so complicated just to get electricity.
Oh, it's fascinating to think. You know, the joke in the plant always was you always thought that these fools out there thought that all you did is you had you had this little rheostat that you walked down and you started turning it, and that brought all the power up. It takes hours to put a power plant on from having it cold. And then you have to get it up to a certain speed. I mean, those pipes have to be warm. They have to be warmed properly, because if you have water hammer, the first day I started in the powerhouse, they were putting it on, and the water hammer, we had some water hammer and some 12-inch lines, and they're up over your head, and that thing banged like somebody beating on it with about a 20-pound sledge or a little more. And it really kind of wakes you up to the power you're actually playing with.
Right. And the responsibility that comes with that power.
Yeah, yeah.
There seems to be a correlation there, though, that I thought of right now when you talked about Grandpa Reeves not being able to relate and people in life not being able to relate the amount of work and effort it takes to get all of this electricity to them to have the life that they want. And how that correlates with the way that we operate in our lives. Because we don't know how to relate to each other, we're distant in our relationships.
I think, just thinking of Dad, of GTR, the catch was the damage that happened to him with the first wife meant that he was always suspicious of other men, that somebody was going to hit on his wife. And in fact, I've been told that Mom always was very careful who she was talking with, because she didn't want anything to go back to Dad that she might have been talking to some other guy, this, that, and the other. It was one of those situations.
It's very interesting how society has changed now, and people don't necessarily take that into consideration. Now it seems more in the sense that it's a bad thing to be conscientious of our partner and to recognize the traumas that they've gone through and what can I do to actually help them get through it and improve.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about, but Mom, Grandma, my mother lived till she was 101.
Right.
And I remember Annette telling me not so long back that she took Mom up to the cemetery where Dad was buried, because Dad was died in 1962. And Mom died 10 years ago now.
Wow.
But the catch was Dad would be 131 this year, Mom would be 111. But she actually said, "George, I'll be back the next time I'll stay."
Wow. And I remember when Grandma died, she said that she was ready to go be with Grandpa.
Yeah. The poor woman was out of work.
And it's the same thing that almost killed Grandpa.
Oh, yeah. It is what killed him.
He was out of work. He had no purpose. And the minute Grandma found out that she wouldn't be able to work, they could slap a pacemaker in, but she couldn't go and do chapel. She couldn't go and have lunch with her friends. That she had to stay to her room. She was checked out.
She was not going to assisted living.
And it makes me wonder how many people are facing the same thing, that the purpose that they have in their life isn't meaningful to them, and they're not doing anything about it. They're not going out and looking for opportunities or creating things for them to be better.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a lot of times in our relationship, because you were just doing the best that you could with what you had available, that the purpose that you had for you wasn't necessarily one that was fulfilling of you as a man and who you wanted to be, and that impacted me and your relationship.
Yeah, and I think you're finding with your other job right now what I found with working in the powerhouse.
I've found it several times, working for the retail management, working for the distribution management, and the sacrifices that come with it. But however, the thing that I've learned looking back from our relationship is that I can include my family into building something that gets me out of that and into the future of something that we can all share and be proud of and help other people do the same thing. And I wouldn't be able to be in this spot right now if I wouldn't have had your example and have the relationship that we have right now to be able to learn from it to move forward.
Yeah, yeah. You've come a long way. I really had serious doubts about you in those teenage years and some of your friends.
Yeah. And I think that's the true opportunity out there for the people out there to recognize that if a father can see it in his son, that he can make improvements to be better, to do something different, to create an outcome that we can all be proud of, that you out there can do the same exact thing, that hope isn't over, that life isn't over, but what is over is you being the same person that you were in the past. So I want to tell you out there that you can do it. And I want to tell you, I've seen you grow and I've seen you improve, and I'm proud of you too. And thank you for being on this podcast, because I know that when we first started talking about this, you were a little worried about what would come from it. And I believe it's probably going to be one of the best podcasts. So for the people out there, I would like to give you the opportunity to meet my dad, to know what we come up with, and to thank you for being here on this show. This is the Man Up and Own It show, where we talk about experiences and difficulties that men may go through and how they can do something better. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button, and leave a message for my dad. I'd appreciate it, and I know he would too. Thank you.